My daughter waited until I carved the Thanksgiving turkey to tell me to move out of the house I pay for, and she had no idea what I had discovered the night before. Tessa did not even look at me when she said it. She kept chewing, eyes on her plate, voice flat. You need to move out. Mom, this arrangement isn't working anymore. Her husband, Eli, froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. His knuckles tightened around the handle, but he did not say a word. He just stared at the turkey like he hoped the table would swallow him whole. I set the knife down slowly. My name is Marena Holt, and at 68 years old, I have lived long enough to recognize when someone has rehearsed a line. Tessa had practiced this. She delivered it like a scripted announcement. Really, my voice came out softer than I expected. I pay the rent, I pay the bills, and I pay for the groceries. Silence spread across the table, thick and bitter. For a moment, even the sound of the ceiling fan seemed to stop. Eli's eyes darted toward Tessa, begging for a signal. She ignored him. Instead, she smirked. It's time for boundaries. Mom, we've talked about this. No. She had talked. I had listened, nodded, compromised. I moved into their Charleston house because she said she needed me. I covered expenses because she said they were drowning. I carried the weight because I thought family meant something. But now, sitting at that table with the turkey I cooked, the meal I funded, and the lights I paid to keep on, my daughter looked at me like I was someone to be cleared out. I picked up my napkin, folded it, and placed it beside my plate. Tessa watched for a reaction, any reaction. I gave her none, because the truth was already burning quietly in my chest. She did not know I had seen the text message she sent the night before the message that proved she planned to remove me long before this dinner. I lifted my water glass, steadying my breath as the first crack in our family finally revealed itself, leading me toward the moment everything would change. Before all of this, my life in Mount Pleasant felt like the first steady breath I had taken in years. My small retirement condo overlooked nothing fancy, just a quiet row of oaks near Shem Creek. But it was mine. I woke to soft light, brewed my coffee the way Daniel used to like it, and walked the same path every morning until my knees warmed and my mind cleared. At 68, peace felt like a luxury I had finally earned. Then my phone rang one evening, the kind of ring that drags a person back into old obligations. Tessa's voice broke before she even reached the words. Mom, we're behind on everything, she said. The mortgage is late again. Daycare is eating us alive. We can't keep up. I pressed the phone harder against my ear. How far behind? A few months, she whispered. If something doesn't change, we might lose the house. That house, the old Charleston place, still carried my husband's scent in certain corners. Daniel had fixed the porch steps himself, measured Tessa's height on the kitchen doorway every birthday, painted the shutters the summer he got sick. The idea of losing it made my chest tighten. Let me come help for a little while, I told her, just until things get back on track. She exhaled like she had been waiting for me to say that. Thank you, Mom. I knew you'd understand. I spent the next weekend packing boxes and stacking them by the door. When Eli came to pick me up, he barely met my eyes. He loaded the boxes quietly, shutting the trunk with a soft thud. Tessa said, "You'll help us get ahead," he murmured. "I'll do what I can," I answered. He nodded but stayed distant, tapping the steering wheel the entire drive back toward Charleston. It struck me then, barely a flicker of awareness, how little he seemed relieved to have me coming. I stepped into their house that afternoon believing I could steady things. I did not know that the moment I carried my last box inside, something in my own life had begun to slip away. The first month back in Charleston, I tried to keep things light. I paid the overdue electricity bill because the notice on the counter made Tessa panic. Just this month, I told her. She hugged me tightly. I promise. We'll catch up soon. The next week, the refrigerator was nearly empty. Tessa sighed loudly as she stared inside. Since you cook anyway, could you grab groceries? Just until we stabilize. I agreed. Then I agreed again, and again, eventually. I stopped keeping track of how many bags I carried in. By the end of the second month, Tessa sat beside me at the kitchen table with a stack of envelopes. Mom, the rent is due tomorrow. We're short, only for a little while. Once Eli's hours pick up, we'll be fine. I studied her face. She looked hopeful, desperate, certain I would not refuse. And I didn't. I wrote the check and slid it across the table. Thank you, she whispered, almost relieved rather than grateful. Her tone changed after that. Softer at first. You're home all day, she said one afternoon. Could you handle the dishes too? It would help. I washed them, then wiped the counters. Then did the laundry when I found baskets left in the hallway. One Saturday, her friends came over for brunch. I heard Tessa laughing in the living room. Mom lives with us because she gets lonely, she said brightly. She needs the company. I stood in the kitchen doorway holding a tray of coffee cups, the lie settling heavily in my chest. None of them looked up long enough to notice. Later that evening, Eli cleared his throat. We've been thinking, maybe we could turn the guest room into a small studio for my cousin, just to bring in some extra money. Tessa nodded like the idea was harmless. It would help all of us. I felt the shift, then subtle. Cold, unmistakable. The house I was paying to keep afloat was slowly becoming a place where I no longer belonged. I folded a dish towel over the sink, breathing in the realization that the ground beneath me had begun to move. The moment that changed everything did not arrive with a shout. It slipped in quietly, the way truth often does. I was walking toward the kitchen to take the trash out when I heard Tessa's voice, low, sharp, not meant for me. Once she's out, we'll rent the room. Easy money. Eli muttered something I could not hear, but Tessa cut him off. She'll manage. She always does. We just need the space back. I stopped in the hallway, my hand tightening around the trash bag. My daughter sounded practical, almost cheerful, like removing me was no different than rearranging furniture. They were planning my exit not out of frustration, not in a heated moment, but as a financial strategy. Eli stepped closer to the sink. Just don't tell her until after Thanksgiving. I know, Tessa whispered. It'll be cleaner that way. I backed away before they could see me, forcing my breath into something steady. The words clung to me like cold air. Not only did they want me gone, they wanted it timed, managed, executed. That evening, Tessa knocked on my door. Mom, can we talk? I opened it slowly. She gave me a tight smile. Eli and I really need more privacy. This house isn't big enough for 3 adults. It's just not working. Her tone was practiced, too smooth. She believed she was being reasonable. I'm doing my best not to crowd you, I said. It's not that. She replied. We just need our own space. You understand, I did. Far more than she knew. 2 days later, I came home from a morning walk and the keypad on the front door beeped red. Invalid code. Tessa swung the door open before I could try again. Oh, sorry, she said lightly. I changed it by accident. I'll text you the new one. She did not meet my eyes. I stepped inside, holding the weight of everything I had heard, everything I now knew was coming. Thanksgiving was only a week away, and I understood I was moving toward a moment my daughter had rehearsed long before the turkey ever touched the table. After Tessa told me to move out in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner, I walked to my room without a word. The hallway felt narrow, but not because of the walls. It was the finality settling in, the cold understanding that nothing I said at that table would have changed her mind. I closed the bedroom door gently. No tears came, not even the threat of one, just a quiet, steady clarity spreading through my chest, the kind that arrives when the last illusion finally shatters. I opened the closet and pulled out the small suitcase I had brought from Mount Pleasant months earlier. The zipper rasped in the stillness. I set it on the bed and began folding the clothes I actually wore. 2 pairs of pants, a few shirts, a sweater Daniel had loved on me. I reached for the drawer where I kept important papers, birth certificate, insurance documents, the lease terms I had printed when I first moved in. Those went into a folder at the bottom of the suitcase. My hands paused over a velvet box. Inside was Daniel's old watch, the one he wore every day until the hospital took it off his wrist. I placed it carefully between 2 sweaters. When I reached behind the drawer for the last of my things, my fingers brushed something thin. I pulled out a card soft around the edges from being handled more than once. A birthday card from Tessa, written on a year when she had still called me for comfort, not convenience. I'd be lost without you. Mom. I held it for a moment. The handwriting looked younger, rounder, untouched by resentment or entitlement. Then I set it back exactly where I found it. I did not need to take every piece of the past with me. I sat on the edge of the bed and booked a room in a motel up in North Charleston. 1 week, enough time to breathe, to think, to decide what came next. Downstairs, I heard the clatter of dishes and Tessa's voice drifting faintly with annoyance. I zipped my suitcase, stood, and let the calm settle deeper into my bones. This was the night I packed my life quietly, without asking for permission, without hoping for change. The motel room was nothing more than a faded bedspread, a humming air conditioner, and a lamp that flickered when I turned it on. But it was quiet. No footsteps outside my door, no tense sighs drifting through walls, no daughter waiting to be disappointed in me. I slept longer than I meant to, waking to a pale strip of light slipping under the curtains. My phone lay silent on the nightstand, no missed calls, no messages from Tessa or Eli, not even a question asking where I had gone. I was brushing my hair when the phone finally rang. It was Fiona, my sister. Her voice rushed in before I finished saying hello. Marena, what happened? Tessa called me this morning sounding hysterical. She said you screamed at her, broke a plate, and stormed out of the house. I sat down slowly. That never happened. She swore you snapped. Fiona insisted, though the doubt in her tone softened. She said you left her with unpaid bills and no warning. The anger rose. Not fast or loud, just sharp, clean, undeniable. I paid every rent check since I moved in, I said, every grocery trip, every bill, and I left quietly. Fiona, you know me. I do, she murmured, which is why I called. Something felt off. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. My hands were steady. I typed a single message addressed to the Holt relatives and a few family friends, the people Tessa had likely reached first. I listed the timeline of the past year when I had moved in, how many months I had covered the mortgage, the utilities, the food. I wrote exactly what happened at Thanksgiving dinner. No shouting, no broken dishes, just 5 words from my daughter and a quiet exit from me. I ended the message with a simple line, I am safe. And I left peacefully. I hit send. My phone began buzzing within minutes, a cousin apologizing, an aunt asking for the truth, another message defending Tessa, claiming she must have had her reasons. The reactions split cleanly down the middle. I leaned back against the headboard as another notification lit the screen. Knowing the story was no longer hers alone to twist. By the next morning, the message I sent had already traveled farther than I expected. My cousin Lee called first. I knew something was wrong, she said. Tessa's story didn't make sense. I'm sorry. At Marena, then came a voicemail from an old church friend in Charleston. We're praying for you. If you need anything, you let us know. Another message followed from a neighbor I barely spoke to. Word was moving faster than Tessa could steer it. In the middle of all that, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ruby Nolan, my neighbor back in Mount Pleasant. She never raised her voice. But the disbelief in her tone was unmistakable. I saw what your daughter posted. She said, Someone forwarded screenshots. What did she say? That you refused to help with bills, that you caused scenes, that she's emotionally drained from supporting you. Ruby let out a low breath. I'm sorry you had to read this through me. I closed my eyes. Thank you for telling me. Ruby hesitated. You deserve better than this. Marena. After we hung up, another call came Mrs. Granger, steady as always. People always show who they are when money is involved. She said, Your daughter showed you, believe her. Her voice wasn't cruel. It was simply honest. I opened the folder on my laptop containing the apartment listings I'd been saving. I found the one on James Island, the senior-friendly building with wide elevators and a small walking path behind it. I called the leasing office. Is the unit still available? I asked. Yes, ma'am, the woman said. We can have paperwork ready today. I'll sign, I replied. Later that afternoon, I walked out of the motel with my signed lease tucked into my bag. Relief wasn't loud, it settled quietly, like air returning to my lungs after being held too long. The truth had finally started moving through the cracks, and people were choosing where to stand. I had only been in the James Island apartment for 2 days when someone knocked. The sound was soft, almost unsure, but I knew it before I opened the door. Tessa stood there, holding a store-bought pie, her smile thin and practiced. I heard you moved here, she said. Thought we should talk. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me. Her gaze flicked toward it. Surprised. You're not going to let me in. I'd rather talk out here, I said. She blinked, regrouped. Well, okay. She adjusted the pie in her hands. Mom, this whole thing has gotten blown out of proportion. You embarrassed me with that message. You made me look like a terrible daughter. I didn't make you look like anything. I said, I wrote the truth. Her jaw tightened. You could have come to me first. I did, I said quietly. For months. She let out a short, frustrated breath. You're acting like we tried to hurt you. You told me to move out, I replied. And you planned it long before that dinner. Her eyes darted to the sidewalk. You misheard. Before I could answer, her phone rang. She hesitated, then answered it. Yeah, she whispered into the phone. No, she's here. I'm talking to her now. A pause. Her shoulders tensed. No, she hasn't signed anything yet, she hissed. I said I'm handling it. I did not move. I did not speak. She turned pale when she realized I had heard every word. She ended the call quickly and forced a weak laugh. That was Eli. He's confused. No, I said. I think he was very clear. Tessa stepped toward me. Mom, don't do this. We need to figure something out. I already have, I said. For the first time in our lives, she looked unsure of her footing. She clutched the pie like a shield, searching for the right words. Finding none, I reached for the railing beside me, grounding myself in the quiet I had earned. The door behind me stayed closed. The days after that knock at my door settled into a rhythm I had not felt since before Daniel passed. My new apartment was small, but every sound belonged to me. Every morning, I made coffee in the quiet kitchen and let the warmth settle into my hands. Ruby stopped by one afternoon with a bag of pastries. Your place suits you, she said, looking around. Feels like you can breathe here. I can, I told her, more than I realized. Fiona visited next. She walked slowly around the living room, taking in the stack of unpacked boxes and the framed picture of Daniel I had placed on the bookshelf. You seem lighter, she said. I was worried you'd feel lonely. I think I was lonelier in Tessa's house, I replied. She nodded, her eyes soft. Sometimes peace starts with closing one door. On Sundays, I met Mrs. Granger at church. She linked her arm with mine as we walked inside. You look brighter, she said. That's what happens when you stop carrying what isn't yours. Her words stayed with me long after the service ended. As I rebuilt my small routines, grocery runs, slow walks, evenings spent reading instead of tiptoeing around tension, the silence began feeling like a blessing rather than punishment. But news traveled. as it always did in Charleston. Ruby sat across from me at a cafe one afternoon and lowered her voice. I heard Tessa's having trouble. Rent is late. The bills are behind again. I stirred my tea slowly. She told me things were stable. Ruby shook her head. Her cousin moved into the guest room. Eli wants him gone, but Tessa insisted. Seems like the situation's messy. It did not surprise me. Not anymore. People who think they can reshape the truth usually end up crushed under the pieces. Still, hearing it made something inside me settle deeper. Not satisfaction. Exactly. But clarity. I had stepped away from a storm, and the storm was finally showing itself for what it was. That evening, I sat near the window and let the quiet fill the room. It felt like something solid, something earned. For the first time in a long time, my life belonged entirely to me again. A week after settling into my new routine on James Island, I opened the folder of documents I had taken from Tessa's house. I had meant to sort them, nothing more. But the lease sat on top, and something made me read it again from the first line to the last. My name was the only one on it. Months earlier, when the payments kept bouncing and the landlord threatened to terminate the agreement, I had taken over the account. The property manager updated the contract automatically, transferring the tenancy to whoever held financial responsibility. That person was me. Tessa and Eli had no legal standing in that house, not even partial rights. I called the property manager. "The lease ends in 30 days, she said. "Do you want to renew?" "No," I answered. "Please let the occupants know they will need to vacate." She didn't question it. She didn't need to. The paperwork spoke for itself. The notice was delivered the next morning. By noon, my phone started ringing nonstop. Tessa called first. "Mom, what is this? Why would you do this?" Her voice creaked at the edges. "We have nowhere to go. You told me to leave a house I paid for." I said, "I'm simply honoring your wishes this time for everyone." "You cannot be serious," she snapped. "We need time. You have 30 days. She begged, then blamed, then threatened, her tone flipping so fast it barely made sense. I stayed steady through all of it. Eli called next. His voice small. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "The bills, the cousin, everything's a mess." 3 days later, he moved out to stay with his brother in Somerville. The silence in that house must have been thunderous. Tessa held out until the last week. She finally packed in a rush, stuffing clothes into trash bags. I saw her only once on move-out day. She didn't speak. Maybe she couldn't. She left with the same entitlement she had arrived with, only this time without the house she believed she controlled. I signed a lease for a brighter, newer place overlooking the marsh. Fresh paint, warm light, clean air, my life, my space. Finally, mine again. My daughter once told me to move out. And now, as I watched her carry the last box from the house she tried to claim, I finally understood something simple. You can survive almost anything once you stop letting the wrong people live in your life. If you felt every beat of this story, tap like, leave a comment, or subscribe for more stories that cut this deep.